Hello, welcome to the OpenActive W3C Technical Working Group call for 9th December, that's Thursday. On the call today, we've got myself, Timothy Hill from the Open Data Institute, Matt Davies from Spots, Nick Evans from IMIN, and Debbie Giordano from Everyone Active. And we will, as usual, be trundling through the membership proposal itself. I'll just start sharing my screen here.
Do you know if Nathan's coming at all, Tim?
Oh, so I think I might have had apologies from him, actually.
No worries.
I'll answer that question in just a moment. Good to see my calendar for one moment. Oh, hold on. There we go. Hold on, let me just check in on if we've got a status update from Nathan.
Nope.
He said he'll be a little late.
Oh, great.
So yeah, hopefully not after 2. Okay, so where we got up to last time was we did a number of appendices. All of the appendices relating to entitlements, evidence requests for cases where entitlements depend on things like residence or date of birth, the customer account update action, which eventually became just the customer update action, I believe, and then looked in detail at a couple of the endpoints. I think we crossed all of those off the list except for Appendix D3 with regard to person updates, because we got mired in the question of whether we should be supporting partial updates across various systems via the broker. That became a requirements conversation. So that will be picked up in a W3C Wednesday call in the near future. Did anybody have any points they wanted to make or questions they wanted to raise about the contents of the previous call? Okay, shake of the head and silence. So this call, we've got sections 5 and 6 and their associated appendices, essentially. So associating a barcode with an account, associating entitlements to customer accounts, and then section 7, something we've touched on already a few times is how you display entitlement pricing. I think, again, technically, this is probably all reasonably straightforward, but there might be business logic, business model and requirements questions to raise, but we shall see how we go. So section 5, associating a barcode, brackets, or other access pass to the customer account. The point here is that the access code must contain a prefix specific to the broker, and the broker has got full ownership of that prefix. I suppose the question is whether that's a restriction that makes sense across all use cases. The prefix, the prefixing logic makes sense, but the broker is given full ownership of all barcodes with this prefix. That makes sense in the MCR active case, definitely. But is that something we can rely on more generally? Or is this something that has to be agreed out of band to ensure that this takes place?
This is kind of partly modeled off of the Gladstone. I'm not sure what they're called, Debbie. Additional barcodes or something barcodes, the extra ones that you get that aren't your main one.
Yeah, additional card IDs or additional another method of gaining access to a turnstile is, yeah.
Right.
But they're all just numbers. They're all just stored as numbers in the database. Yeah, letters and numbers.
And am I right in thinking that every additional card ID, or is there named, or there's different types of them you can define, something like that? Is that right?
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess within the system in Gladstone, there's actually nothing stopping you from creating, or is there anything stopping you from creating 2 identical additional card IDs.
Yeah, you can't have the same one across two member records, two or more member records. Yeah.
How about across two additional card IDs?
I'd have to double check with them. I can't remember, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, basically, the question of whether the namespace is, it does seem like it should be universal because barcodes are just barcode's a barcode, isn't it? So it needs to be somehow namespaced, whether that's a prefix, whether that's too prescriptive. We should make it more flexible than just saying it has to be a prefix. Maybe post suffix is also fine, or anything else.
It's going to be completely down to the operator and what card information they've already got in use, and that discussion needs to be had, doesn't it? So like with MCR, for example, we've had to pick something that's not already used with us or Manchester in GLL for Legend to make sure that we can use the same one across them all. That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's it. So it might be that we might want to genericize the wording here, so it's not about prefixes, but actually it's about, I mean, whatever the pattern is that's agreed upon, there obviously can't be any clashes between the MCR pattern and the Westminster pattern and the other, whatever else is going on. And that's going to be something everyone's going to need to navigate, because if there was a clash between the patterns, that would be a problem. But whether the pattern has to be based on prefix, I suppose, is maybe a separate thing.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be from a database perspective. It's just the approach we've taken.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little puzzled by the broker is given full ownership of all barcodes with this prefix. That makes sense, because if the namespace wasn't unique to a broker, we'd have a possibility of clashes, and can reassign them from other customer accounts within the booking system to ensure that they're associated with the correct customer. So sorry, what's the, is the use case for that the one just reviewed with Debbie?
No, not quite. So the problem here we've got is if we don't have that full ownership situation. So let's say that you created an account in MCR, for example, or any broker, but at least use MCR as an example. Create an account in MCR. You then connect your account to, say, Everyone Active, and that account then gets assigned a barcode. Fine, the Everyone Active account gets the MCR barcode. Great, you can use that. But actually, let's say they've assigned they've logged into the wrong account. They've got several accounts. Maybe they've got one for their kids. They've got the same password. They've used their password manager, whatever reason, they've logged into the wrong one. They now they disconnect from that account, and the barcode remains, because obviously, or it gets disconnected somehow. Doesn't really matter how. Barcode remains. They now log into a different account. And now we have a situation where the account they've logged into, we want to assign the barcode, obviously, but we can't, because it actually already belongs to another account, which is the one they previously logged into. And it's a strange situation then, because from the broker's perspective, even though the broker in business terms owns the namespace, right? Because the broker's the one assigning those codes, and so should really be determining where they live and don't live. The broker's now lost access to the account where that barcode has been set. And they might not get that access back. I mean, unless they, that person goes and remembers the username and password they need to log in with, etc. And so all of that doesn't really make sense, because, as mentioned, the namespace is owned by the broker. And so to make it really easy and remove a whole load of edge cases, rather than having to, we're modeling in the API the business in the real world situation, which is namespace is owned by the broker, therefore barcode should be dictated by the broker. So the broker can then can pull a barcode from another user, doesn't know which user that was, obviously, and just associate it with this one. And because it's always within the broker, it's only within that namespace, and that namespace has got an ID. It won't do any damage to any other, any other barcodes that are not in that namespace. And by namespace, I mean further on in the documentation, it shows that the barcodes are associated with a namespace identifier. So it's not within the barcode itself. It's, you know, they're namespaced by the ID that they're given. And so basically it's saying that if there's another within the same namespace, within the same ID, if there's another barcode there, then they can just reassign that.
Okay, there might be, I suppose, systems implications once we look at that particular endpoint for doing that. But in principle, does that make sense to both Debbie and Matt?
So just in real simple terms, those duplicate accounts scenarios occur, you're going to remove it from the old account and apply it to the new one.
That's right, without needing permission from the old account.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Then the second use case here, the broker specific. Oh, sorry. Staying on the first paragraph. So this must, I suppose, is kind of in standards terms an all caps must.
Yeah, and so this is probably the issue, isn't it? It's where we probably want to make these, and I think there's already a comment on this actually specifically, but we probably want to respond into this. If we use the terms to be more generic, must use a pattern, e.g. prefix, suffix.
Mm-hmm.
Specific to the broker with this within a namespace. So focus going forward, there's namespace, oops, and can reassign them from yeah, so separating basically to keep the flexibility at the maximum, we're just using namespaces for security to make sure brokers aren't ripping into other namespaces. But then the pattern is whatever and maybe it's a maybe it's must use a pattern to the broker, though this is agreed out of band maybe.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Again, I feel like the imaginary guidance document is getting here, but that's fine. I think it's really would be useful to create that document. But yeah, I feel like it's going to be one big action at the end of these calls is just go through, identify everything that's needed as a precondition to setting this up and put it in one place, and then we can cross-reference. The second paragraph puzzled me a little bit just because I wasn't sure what happened after that point. So the broker-specific barcode may also be assigned by the seller directly in the booking system, and hence the barcode should be checked periodically by the broker and compared to its latest value. So,
where are you reading that?
Sorry. So it's my cursor is actually right underneath yours. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, it must be assigned by the seller directly. Yes. So yes, and so the reason for this is well, it's not very clear, is it? The barcode should be checked periodically by the broker and compared to the broker's expectations or something. I mean, I'll take the wording in a sec, but basically this allows a direct the update can work in both directions. So in to spell out the use case for this one, so I created an account. I've linked it to with a barcode. I've linked it as I did just now to my account. So I've created an MCR active account. I've linked it to my Everyone active account, and I've got a barcode, but it's on the app only because it's not a physical card. It's on the app. I don't actually have a phone, so I don't use the app. I can't access that barcode. So although there is a barcode that's been nominally assigned, because everyone gets a barcode, that's not, I've not got a card with it on. But actually, I quite like a physical card because I've had a physical card before and I'd like one now. So I go into Leisure Centre and say, can I get a physical card for my my discounts? I signed up online, or even this could all happen on an iPad in the Leisure Centre, and I'd like a barcode. I'd like a physical card. Leisure Centre person behind the front desk takes the next card off the pile of cards they have with barcode pre-printed and gives it to that person gives it to me. But before they do that, they scan it into the booking system with the account. They find me, scan it, add the barcode to the account on the booking system. And so now that barcode is on the booking system, and it's not yet in MCR Active, but obviously that's the MCR Active card, for example. And so for that to become your MCR Active barcode, rather than just the barcode you use to access Everyone Active and the Leisure Centre, it needs to go back up, and that's what this allows. So the barcode is found to be different in the booking system. That could be taken by, for example, MCR Active and then used as the primary barcode. And then maybe that's sent down to any other systems that are connected as well. So wherever
Is that right, Nick? I thought that the issuing of the MCR cards was being maintained directly by MCR. I weren't aware that, or maybe I've missed this part, but I thought the previous discussions were that the cards wouldn't be available for us to issue in the centre.
No, I think they are. I think
our own cards are the Everyone Active ones, but not the MCR specific ones, as far as I'm aware.
Oh, I believe that. Well, that's the last conversation we had around this, was that they were. I'm trying to remember why.
I think we should check, just because they're different fields in the database. So from a colleague's perspective at front of house, there's no point in them scanning an MCR card barcode into the main card ID field. It needs to go into the MCR specific one, otherwise you wouldn't retrieve it.
That's good.
So it just needs to be clarified, I think.
Is it complicated for them to do that? Scan it into the MCR one?
No, but they just got to make sure they do it, otherwise it's not going to get shared.
Yeah, yeah, fair. Okay, yeah, good to clarify that. I suppose that's the MCR requirements question, isn't it? I'll take that to add that to the list of things to clarify. I mean, that is literally what GLL have got arranged. So, but it might be that there's, I don't know. We could get to double check, as you say. I suppose even if it wasn't the case, presumably from a standards perspective, we'd still want to support kind of physical cards issued in centre. Would we?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, there may always be a case.
Yeah, it's not an edge case, I don't think. And it's not an MCR Active unique situation or Active Westminster unique situation. Although, so the implication of this is that there's a giant pool of barcodes, and these have somehow been divided up between brokers and the broker and the various sellers, right?
Well, I mean, what it practically means is those cards get printed centrally and issued to all the centres, I think, from MCR.
I think that's one of the reasons why I thought they were being done centrally and not sent out, because otherwise you could end up sending 10,000 to Wythenshawe, but they never get used. It just feels like a bit of a waste. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then what do they do when they run out? What is that process for reordering cards, and what do they do with the customers if they're waiting for a card? And I honestly thought that the customer was sent the card if they wanted it or something like that, or they were collecting it from a central point, but I could be wrong, but that's just what I recall.
Yeah, I'll definitely clarify that.
Okay.
And the broker has to be aware of which IDs exist on cards so that it doesn't assign something that's already on a card.
Yeah, I mean, that could be as simple as the prefix, MCR-C for card and MCR-A for app. And then,
sure. But once again, it's one of those things that has to go into the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. So maybe that's a good, yeah. Maybe it's a comment on this.
Yeah, it's quite soluble, but again, I think it's just about noting explicitly that that's a requirement, that
Yeah.
the kind of, yeah, the range of identifiers has to be defined.
Yeah. I'm sure that's something that must happen at the moment, Debbie, with online cards and in-house cards for everyone active in terms of splitting those identifiers. Presumably.
Our app card ID is a different one to the membership card ID, because the membership card ID can be changed anytime if they lose it or
Right.
need a replacement for whatever reason. But
Yeah.
there's no requirement to change the app card ID because the physical card ID has been changed. There's no connection between the two.
Sure. So I guess they must be like, they must look different or have a different pattern or something, so they don't conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so if we jump down then to the actual API endpoints, let's see here for this. Where are we here? Okay, so put essentially the access pass into the booking system. So once again, we've got the namespace prefixing, which again, I guess needs to be generalized. That's essentially from the section. So this paragraph here, the namespace identifier may be the same as the namespace specific prefix. I assume that's sort of referring to what this part of the address is. So
that's right. So we probably want to just remove this whole namespace specific prefix stuff, don't we? So it's more generalized.
Yeah.
Really focus on the namespace identifier.
Minor there, but
so it's we remove, I imagine we don't want booking system validation to give maximum flexibility there, as long as the patterns are all unique without any issue.
Sorry, can you say that again, Nick? I didn't catch that.
Sorry, we probably want to remove, I've just removed the broker specific validation for the prefix and suffix. I presume, I mean, it's not standardized, so we can't implement a validation on that. So it will just have to be a operational thing that obviously people don't assign barcodes that are not the right.
Yeah.
Flash, otherwise we're going to have problems.
Yeah. Oh, okay, and I've got another, maybe the same, I guess, maybe the same as the namespace. Ooh, yeah, the namespace identifier may be the same as a namespace string or something.
I think that whole thing isn't within, it's a namespace.
Okay. I found the next paragraph curious. I don't really have a problem with it. I'm just wondering what prompted it. It seems sort of obvious to me that you would want to do that, but was there a sort of specific objection raised that's countering?
No, just a kind of a note for implementation and something that could be tested with a test suite. I don't know whether that's currently an optional, obviously. I mean, we could make that a must. It does seem like it. It does seem like it could be a must, actually. Oh no, I know the reason, because some systems don't have the internal logic as nicely laid out as Gladstone for this. Sometimes there's not specific namespace features available internally, so they might have to do some kind of stuff that means that security is actually not implementable between the different things.
Right. Is it maybe splitting the difference? Is it maybe a should?
Yes, good idea.
So the following points about the actual implementation. I was curious about the forced update aspect of it, because it seems as though the underlying assumption is that barcodes are associated with customers and not with specific sessions.
That's right. That is exactly right. They're definitely associated with customer accounts.
And if it were associated with a specific session, then it might live in the order item, like an access code. Or
Yes,
something
exactly.
that doesn't.
No, that's exactly right. These are all this whole section is talking about customer account barcodes.
Mhm.
So maybe that's worth clarifying. So barcodes are related to a customer account.
And the cases in which you would want to associate a separate barcode would be dependent accounts, but in that case, it would still be a separate account.
Yeah.
And in the event of a guest, what happens?
So the guest barcodes are generated separately. That's a whole. I mean, within most booking systems, those guest barcodes exist in their own with their own pattern or namespace.
Okay.
It's a $T in Gladstone. They just stick in front of the barcode, and then that's what differentiates a guest.
Okay. Okay, so it's noted explicitly elsewhere how guests would be treated, so that's fine.
The barcode element or QR code or whatever it is the method used is relevant to the booking to gain access. I mean, this is associating a card to a member or something physical to the member to use. But if you've made a booking, then you need the booking barcode to gain access, not the member barcode.
Is it an or is it, as in if you're using a customer account to make a booking, does your member barcode work or your booking barcode work?
Yes, or as long as that booking's associated to that account.
Yes.
Yeah, but if you're a guest, you've not got an account, so you need the barcode for the booking.
That's right. So
Yeah.
that is what's implied by all of this. It's not written anywhere, so maybe that'd be worth keeping as a separate note or something.
Okay.
Carry on what you do that.
Okay, great.
Is there a requirement, Nick? So you know the MCR element of the card, the barcode generation. So are we saying that somewhere in Gladstone they need to be able to say for this site or for this center or this facility, then the prefix is this?
The prefix is based on the broker as this is designed. So the MCR would have their own prefix rather than a particular site or facility.
Okay, but you would need to know what information to put in to associate to that customer for that barcode. So it's not only an ID for the barcode, it needs to go into a specific table with specific information. So for example, I'm not explaining myself very well. There's different IDs, as we would call them, for the different types of cards or wristbands or whatever it is that's being used for access control, which is the additional card thing. So each one would have its own ID. So when you create that against that person, it needs to be put into the table with that information associated to it to say that it's an MCR card. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So Tim, if you scroll down a little bit, hopefully that's what this does. So it includes an identifier MCR alongside the barcode itself. And that can be, is that what we're talking about? Having a...
Okay, so that identifier field is our ID. So what we'd need in the Gladstone world is to say which identifier is associated to which leisure centre.
Which leisure centre? Why is there a
Yeah.
leisure centre mapping from that to the leisure centre?
Well, otherwise, if Westminster come along, the identifier is different.
So do we mean leisure centre, or do we mean the additional card type?
Well, additional card type probably, yeah, but you need a way of
Yeah.
associating that to that leisure centre, don't you?
Well, that's what I wasn't sure. Maybe I'm missing something for the context there. So if this is the additional card type ID or something that's MCR, and then this is the barcode itself that gets stuck in that slot, sounds like. Where does the need to have this associated with a particular leisure centre come from?
Well, where does MCR get stored?
So, well, I assume this MCR is selecting the additional card ID to use the additional card slot in Gladstone. It sounds like MCR would be pre-configured as an additional card ID.
Yeah. So, and if we're setting up different additional card IDs for different contracts, then wouldn't you want a way of us saying this is the identifier for this leisure centre, so that when you submit the card ID, you know what to prefix it with? Or are you storing that your end?
Submit the card.
I know it's not your end, but do you know, is it that
Yeah.
being?
I'm trying to get my head around it. So because well, so MCR have the MCR barcodes are all going to be generated for your use across the whole of Manchester, all operators, all sites, all, you know, who knows what different things. So this number will be, you know, universal number, and that gets generated centrally, and then sounds like there's slots in existing Gladstone which have names. So if there was one in Gladstone called MCR, then that would get slotted in. And if that same customer had a Westminster, maybe they commute between Westminster and Manchester. If they were in Westminster and they had a Westminster card, they could have a, you know, identifier as Westminster, text is WCC 0 whatever, and that would be a different additional card ID. So yeah, you could use your Westminster card to get into your Manchester site and vice versa, presumably, because they're just on the account.
Yeah, but so are you saying that we're not storing that prefix, or we're not sharing that prefix with you? It's being determined at the point of conversation, you know, when you're discussing setup and all of that sort of stuff. It's determined what that prefix is.
Yes.
Then it's set up in the Gladstone database, and then whoever it is that's creating the integration knows that they have to put in MCR.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah,
the person...
we don't need a way of in places, for example, for you to be told what that prefix would be.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I see what you mean, because it's consistent then, isn't it? Okay, so so sorry to check to I'm trying to think what's the translation to what we've been talking about with that. So yeah, because we know, right, so because we know MCR at MCR, because we know who the person is that has access, we don't necessarily need to use a namespace here, because the namespace could be inferred by the authentication. So MCR, because we know MCR are making the call to this endpoint, we then can we can infer this, and therefore we can just say that anyone MCR making that call, they have authority over that namespace. But the namespace is just defined by who makes the call rather than anywhere else. So that's a really good point. I suppose the only thing that would restrict is if there's a need to have multiple barcodes or anything. I can't think of a use case where you'd want that though. And Tim and Matt, are you following what we're saying? Not quite.
I thought I was, and then I stopped.
Okay, so I just started try. So I think what we're saying is here. So right now, this endpoint requires the MCR identifier to be provided.
Mhm.
There's nothing else in this API where you need to say, by the way, I'm MCR, because you know that based on authentication. So this is an inconsistency, because everything else is we know you're MCR, therefore you can access these entitlements, or you can whatever stuff. So why is this the only place where you can, almost looks like you could just stick someone else's namespace in there and Westminster, and you could start to overwrite their barcodes? Why are we allowing that? Does that make sense as a question?
It makes sense as a question, yeah. I mean, I assume the answer is that in point of fact, the nature of authentication would mean that you couldn't do that.
Yeah,
so this is a purely syntactical question, right, rather than a operational question. Is that right?
Yeah, it does seem to be, doesn't it? Because you're right. It does. The way this is written as it stands, the barcode is only available, the namespace is only available to the broker specific namespace. So it all does seem to make that pointless. so maybe, yeah, maybe we don't need it. I mean, it would be simpler to remove it.
And more consistent, given that this is the only point where it appears.
Yeah, and I suppose maybe another advantage of it is that I guess if there's internal configuration going on, it's easy to switch that up and change it, later on. If I mean, in the Gladstone case, that would be in, one of they've got a data manager. They could change the prefix. They could do what they want internally. It doesn't affect all the other systems that are using it. So yeah. So should we propose that in here, and then if anyone comes up with any reasons why that might be crazy?
Yeah.
So in simple terms, because I need things in simple terms, sorry. We would create the unique identifier for the MCR active card in the additional card type table. We would share that unique identifier via the places feed. You'd pick that up from the places feed.
Not even that, Debbie. It's even simpler, I think. So
okay.
we get rid of the unique identifier, I think is what we're saying. And do you remember we talked about how there might be configuration in the authentication or somewhere where you can set the default site and things like that? The default site for a broker. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, because we were talking about Westminster having multiple sites and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a default site, which is where the members get created. We talked about being configurable somewhere. All we're saying is that we would also, next to that, we'd also configure the identifier. Well, actually, on Gladstone, it wouldn't be called an identifier; it would be called a additional card type ID. And then, and then MCR active, any barcode they set is put into that additional card ID, and that's just, that's how it is. And so there's no way MCR active can put stuff in Westminster's by accident, if you like, because that's being controlled by Gladstone.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah, I think I understand. I just don't understand enough about the authentication piece, if I'm honest, because it's gone off to a third party to look at, isn't it?
Yeah. It basically, that just means it's going to be a thing you can configure somewhere, XML file or whatever,
Yeah, it makes sense for it to be associated to a place, but yeah, logically in my head.
So that's what I'm checking. What's the reason for that to be? Is that just because MCR active in Westminster happen to be place based? Because obviously Decathlon could be a nationwide thing.
Yeah. For stuff like Decathlon, though, are we going to be issuing cards as an example? Are we issuing member barcodes or whatever terminology use?
I don't know. I mean, suppose this is a, who knows how this could be used in the future, but in theory, you could actually have a Decathlon member card, that they, a loyalty card or something being set, so you can use your Decathlon loyalty card to walk in and access stuff. Same principle. Or a university campus student card.
Okay. Yeah, we might need to discuss it with Andy. I think he's off ill at the moment, but yeah.
Sure. Just to check there's nothing else we've missed here.
Yeah, because it's interpreting this back to them.
Yeah.
I don't think, if I'm honest, that this document clearly states what needs to happen in a simple term. I really struggle to read it sometimes.
Sure. No, good feedback.
It goes over my head, a lot of it does, unfortunately.
No, that's a very good feedback.
I'm coming from an operational and logical approach. This is extremely technical sometimes.
Yeah, that's completely fair enough. Definitely try and make the descriptions a bit more, a bit less technical.
And I think, again, that having another document which is like, here's all the things you need to talk about outside of the technical implementation, I think would clarify that sometimes as well. That, if we had a document saying, you need to agree what this namespace prefix is for a particular initiative, those conversations have to happen. I think and guidance be given around what the possibilities there are. That might be more helpful in a way than looking at a technical description of an API endpoint.
Yeah, it's okay for you, Nick. You live and breathe this. We don't. We like dip in and out of it.
No. You absolutely appreciate the feedback. It's yeah, agreed. Good to get the stuff in there.
Yeah, is there a possibility, sorry, just pursuing the place-based, so the granularity you're talking about, Debbie, is the level of Manchester or Westminster, like that's the kind of place level that you're thinking about?
Yeah.
Right.
And I guess that's just because I only know places at the moment, and that just might be me being a bit too narrow-minded. The Decathlon example wouldn't have occurred to me. Because everything is a place to us at the moment, and you are associating yourself with a place, and you are booking for a place, and all of that it revolves around there. So the association of a additional card ID to a place seemed logical until we threw in the Decathlon example.
So that's a really interesting one. So just so I check I've understood just in the Gladstone example, if you create a member in Gladstone, is that member associated with a place such that they can't access any other place, or is there just one big database of members? It's not per place.
It's a big database of members, but each individual's got a site association. It has to have what's called a member site ID. Each member has to have that. You can't not have anybody on the database without one of those. It doesn't mean they're only restricted to use that centre.
Yes.
Anybody can use any centre, but they have to pay for the activities unless they've got a membership that includes the activities at that centre.
Yes, and they could presumably have memberships across multiple centres.
Yeah, if they've got loads of money and feel the need to travel, of course. Yeah.
Well, I guess the commuter between Manchester and Westminster that has maybe a membership that covers both, or
possibly, yeah. But there's always a site association with each member record.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's normally based on where they originally registered.
Yes, and that's what we talked about with the default site and things like that, because it doesn't affect their user experience other than just that they need one.
Well, it'd affect their experience from a perspective of how we would market to them and the information that they would get within their Everyone Active online profile and stuff like that, because we're associating them with that centre or that area of the country.
Oh, so the area, and is that kind of area more important than the centre? So one of the Manchester sites or one of the Westminster sites, rather than the specific site in Westminster?
No, I don't think either is more important than the other. It just depends what it is that you're doing.
That makes sense. But I mean, in terms of barcodes and how that links in, sounds like we're talking about the same customer account. Like the customer account could have been created originally in Cardiff, and then they moved to Manchester, and you logged in with that, and then they moved to Westminster, and and the barcodes could all be associated kind of irrespective of where the account was created in the home site. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, they could be. I was just thinking of, but that's for our cards. That doesn't matter. We haven't got a prefix for our cards as such, and we've got a well, we haven't got the MCR version. Each site has a number range. We haven't got an MCR. The exception of that is that we use APP for the app cards, but that's not that doesn't change per center. But the association of I was trying to understand how somebody that's come along that's doing an integration would understand what the prefix needed to be for the submission of the barcode that you're associating with that member record.
Yeah, but yeah, which is based on the. Sorry, say that again.
Yeah, you're saying it's based on a discussion rather than it coming from somewhere in the database.
Yeah, exactly. Based on a discussion up front with the broker. And then it depends on the scope of the broker. I mean, another good example of this might be, and we're talking in the future, well, maybe not that much in the future in Manchester, but I was thinking in London with boroughs. Let's say this actually gets rolled out to all the boroughs of London, and you got the whole London-wide card, or Zone 1 card or something, or Zone 1 and 2 card. Those cards would presumably need to work across lots of different systems and lots of different places.
Yes, but in all you would do, let's say you prefixed it with LON, then you would just say, right, LON is associated to sites 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and any registrations that come from OpenActive need to have barcodes of that format.
Oh, I see.
Centers.
But there could be, yeah, I see what you mean. There could be a crossover where you've got Westminster having a Westminster card and an LON, London-wide card, where they both use the same sites in Westminster. So that might be where, if it's place-based, then every site is only loyal to one broker. Whereas if it's broker-based, then you could have LON plus Westminster plus Decathlon with all different cards that access the Westminster sites.
Okay.
And sorry, I'm going to chase the hair down the burrow a bit, but for my own understanding, so at the level of the borough, say at the level of the broker initiative, that seems fairly clear. So supposing I've got a membership at a site in Pimlico in the borough of Westminster, and I get a barcode, what prevents me going into a different Gladstone provided facility covered by Westminster, which I'm not associated with? Is it just that it's not expecting that barcode, so it knows not to let me in?
It's about whether the individual's got a booking.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. You're associating the barcode to the individual. Has the individual got entitlements or bookings for that facility at that time that they're arriving? And if they've not, then they won't gain access.
It looks for me, can't find me, don't go in. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you for explaining that. Matt, we only have you for a few minutes. Was there anything you wanted to raise?
No, thanks. Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm going to have to dash now to do my LFT, which I forgot to do beforehand anyway. So yeah, thank you, and see you next week.
Okay, I hope it comes back negative.
Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Enjoy the activity. All right.
Thanks.
Okay. So Debbie, do you feel like you've got an adequate understanding of that to translate that back to Andy?
Yeah, possibly. I'm sure we'll be having conversations about things when they get around to doing each one of them. I think that's been the approach more recently anyway, that Andy sets up conversations with Nick about certain areas of the requirements. That's my understanding.
Yeah, happy to do that. Carry that on.
Okay, cool. I'm afraid I'm going to get technical again, but I think this might be a reason a means of revisiting the validation question, actually, because here we've got an error of 403. Oh, that's access to the barcode namespace. Sorry. Error 409 conflict. The barcode value specified is not permitted within this booking system.
Yeah, we're gonna have to bin these errors, aren't we? So you don't. So we don't. This one's not relevant because we no longer have barcode validation. And this one's not relevant because, and this error really is the point Debbie was making. It access to the barcode namespace not permitted for this broker. Now, why on earth do we have a namespace? Yeah, because you can't access any other namespace anyway. So very good, yeah, very good find. Just complexity for no reason. Yeah, and then please initialize the customer account. That's a standard error. So the barcode prefix does not match is also not relevant. We'll probably need in here is a conflict error that just says the barcode value specified is not something like one of these existing ones, basically saying in the case that someone misconfigures something, someone from MCR starts trying to write Westminster barcodes, they're going to end up with conflicts with Westminster. And so we need an error that just says that you're trying to write a barcode that already exists in the system and you don't have access to yank it back. So maybe that's the only one we need, which is an access denied error.
So is that a 403? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yes. So that is the barcode value not permitted. So the specified barcode already exists in a barcode namespace that some words like that in the barcode namespace that is not accessible to this broker. Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, we want to get rid of the 409.
Does not match. Oh yes, absolutely. That's, yeah, great. Okay.
Okay, right. Simpler.
Simplify test cases, reduce lines of code everywhere, generally cheaper. Great.
Win.
Yeah, good thing to find. Yeah. Well spotted. Well spotted, Debbie.
I'm not sure I spotted that. I just raised the question, which has led you on to it. I think that's
good teamwork.
I think it's good though, because yeah, we had an answer floating around that didn't have a question. So yeah. So with deletion, I guess same change with the namespace identifier. The example is a little bit strange because the only response we give is the forbidden one. So is no content the expected reply for success?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's right. I think that's consistent with the deletes in the booking spec.
Okay, right. Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, 200 codes, generally a good thing. Okay, that takes us into, oh, sorry, Debbie, any questions there?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, yeah, deletion, hopefully simpler than creation. Okay, associating an entitlement with a customer account. I think what questions jumped out at me there. I think this was all clear to my mind. This is really just establishing the ground rule that the broker might have a particular, there might be broker specific entitlements. that are then added and removed from the customer account independently of any memberships that might exist. So I think that was sort of fairly clear because it's lying down the basic logic of the spec as a whole. Any further comments, Dick or Debbie?
I don't think so.
Okay. Sorry, I just realized, breaking the flow completely, in 5, is it worth adding what the broker should do in the case that the barcode does not meet its expectations?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So I should check. Yeah, choose to put up. This is a very unclear sentence. It probably should be reworded. I'll clarify this sentence. This paragraph. Yeah.
Will that always be the right course of action?
It could ignore. Well, this is a good question. That it could do two things. I mean, it could do a number of things, but it could either just automatically adopt it and assume it's the right one. It could prompt the user to check whether it wants to take that barcode and then bring it into the account, depending on what that barcode is. It could just ignore it and overwrite it anyway. I suppose all those options are available.
Yeah, it's tricky because we don't have any other information about the barcode beyond the fact that it's different, right? Like we don't have a change date or anything like that. So it would be hard for the user agent to give much information about the criteria on which you'd accept or reject the barcode on the booking system.
Yeah, that's right. You don't, I mean, I suppose it's interesting that you're right, there isn't an updated timestamp here. However, I think it doesn't need to have one in practice because, I'm trying to think why this was. I think it's because if you've got a thing where you're polling and saying there's a new barcode, you're already talking about a day or 2 days or however many days how frequent that's happening. And so when that change is detected, it almost doesn't, it's unlikely that you're getting, there's two, because it's directional. So it's come from the center, and it'll only have come from the center if someone has provisioned a barcode in center. And so it's almost enough to know, it's coming from the center, therefore I'm going to just accept it. Or because the ones that are created centrally also could be a physical card, in fairness. But I suppose it's unlikely that you get a physical card sent out. You could send a physical card out from centrally and then pick one up in center. But again, if you pick one up in center, you'd think that would be the one that you would take because it's a physical card that's been given to the customer. They've got it in their hands. But I mean, worst case, I suppose you just display both and say, this is the one we sent to you in the post. This is the one that we've given you in the center. Which do you want to use? That one, right?
In really simple terms, how are you checking this periodically? What are you doing?
Oh, just
I know I say you. I'm really sorry. I don't mean you. You know what I mean.
I know.
How is it intended that the solutions will check periodically?
Just making a call every day or whenever because there's a number of things that could change, including customer name and other things. And idea being that there's one endpoint in here. There's one API call that basically receives all the details in one go. And so that being called, at, you know, whatever frequency, daily or something, just to check there's nothing that's changed. And if there has, then act accordingly.
Because I would liken it to something that Gladstone have got already, which is like get member changes. So, which is something that other third parties use, and that just, you know, pulls entries into a table if a member record is modified in any way, and then it's down to the third party to retrieve all the information for that customer based on the fact that we've said something's changed, but we're not telling you what. It's just something. Is that, are you using that sort of a method? Is that the same method, or is there an expectation for like Gladstone and Legend to build a whole new thing just for open data?
It's not a new it would leverage the existing functionality. It just doesn't do it. That's more like a feed of changes. And so this isn't feed based, this is polling. It is more efficient to do it as a feed based mechanism. I guess it's more work in some ways, because the issue is security. If the feed includes all member changes, then we're giving the broker, you know, member changes that are maybe nothing to do with the broker, maybe related to sites all over the country that aren't in Manchester, for example. And so if it was a feed-based approach, probably it would need to be constrained so that you only get broker accounts in that feed, ones that are connected, and could absolutely do that. I mean, that's definitely possible to you know, take a feed-based approach, and then that then just means that if there's any changes to the member, that feed just includes probably the customer ID would be enough, and then the person polling, the broker polling, would need to just retrieve that customer ID from the API. So we could absolutely switch to use a feed-based model, and it would be more efficient in some ways. I suppose it'd just be a need to for Gladstone to do a little bit of extra work to just build a filter into that, so that, you know, they only get member changes back on that feed that are related to the broker, but the broker has access to.
If you don't do it that way, I guess I'm not understanding the other way that you were proposing it was done.
Oh, just by checking in on all the members, just going through them periodically. So, you know, it might make a call every 15, 20 seconds or something, just to look at another record and cycle through them. Maybe, I don't know, it depends how many there are. But you can get through all the records, I imagine, you know, within a day or two, just going through them every few seconds. And
how are you identifying if there's changes? Are you comparing every bit of data you've got to the response?
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. So that is less effort. That's less effort to build from Gladstone, and slightly more work for the broker to do that. But as you say, it is more work for the broker to compare. Yeah.
If I'm honest, I'm concerned about like the performance impacts that would have. Of you just constantly cycling through members and checking everything, comparing everything that goes against those records. And if stuff like this card ID one, you're going to have the member could have a card ID, and they could have an additional card ID of this, and an additional card ID of this, and an additional card ID of this. That's all going to come back in the response. And how are you going to know which one is the one you want to pick?
Oh, you'd only have the broker would only get their card ID back, the one related to the broker. So they would.
So then that is Gladstone work anyway.
Yeah. Look, yeah. I mean, we could definitely switch to a feed-based approach. I mean, I can see that you're totally right. It does create more load on the Gladstone servers, you know, polling like that to check for changes. Whereas if it's just it's useful to poll like that anyway, because it means that we can spot if the authentication is broken or something. And yeah, I mean, we're not talking, because the thing is, we're only talking about a very small call. Like, it's not it's not going to be a very, I doubt it's going to be a lot of load on the servers, because we're talking about very infrequent checks. But yeah, I can see there's a good argument for a feed approach in terms of getting those same changes. So yeah.
So sorry, I'm swimming here a bit, actually. So the original assumption with regard to updates to the customer, to the end user, is to poll this endpoint?
Yes.
Okay. But Debbie, you're saying that Gladstone currently publishes a continuous list of updates that can be accessed over some kind of endpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just actively kind of pushed in a sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that.
No, that's fine.
But, yeah.
That's just how we do it at the moment. So that's just what I'm familiar with. This is just coming at it from the other way, and I'm just trying to make sense of it, and why it's more beneficial to do it this way rather than the way that we currently do with other third parties. And yeah, my concern being, if we're consistently polling the database, what impact would that have on our performance? Because those endpoints that you're creating are using the same APIs and endpoints that Gladstone have got that are being used for other things at the same time. So in our world, let's say you've got MediaBlaze, which is our website company, then you've got Technogym, and then you've got Aqua Passport or whatever, and they're all calling the same endpoint to get a bit of information. I'm just concerned about that constant bashing, whereas the feed method that they've done is used with Technogym, it's used with SCV, which means that the way it works is it says, right, this member has been updated in some way, put that into a table, and then we would create open data as what's called like a third party. I can't remember the exact terminology, but it then knows whether that third party requires updates for members, subscriptions. There's another one, attendances. So members, subscriptions, and attendances, I think, are the three bits of data that we can notify that third party as being updated. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, we could definitely, it's the same exact principle here in terms of what that would be, and that is a feed. You can absolutely add it in. And yeah, you're right. It would be less load on the servers. Yeah, I can see the value of that. I mean, it does seem like a good idea. So maybe we should adopt that. Is it worth us adding this to the spec as a suggestion, and then maybe in the next call, when we get a few more people, just to bounce it off everybody and see if that makes sense? But I can see the. I mean, it would be very consistent with the orders feed that we already have. It's just probably the difference would be that we wouldn't put any personal data in there. It would just be a notification to say something's changed, and then they would have to go to the endpoints to retrieve that, because there's just a lot more personal data involved here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying my suggestion is the right suggestion for everybody. It probably won't be. That's just what I understand at the moment. So by all means, let's discuss it with other people, and certainly with Andy, and make sure that he understands that this is a requirement and how he envisaged it working.
Yeah, I guess my concern is we do still need this endpoint. A feed wouldn't be able to replace this endpoint.
That's right. It's additional scope. Well, it's additional work. Things getting more complicated, but also potentially. Well, I mean, it's as Debbie said, it's less load on the servers, isn't it? So that's the main benefit of it. It doesn't reduce any of the existing functionality. Everything else stays exactly as it is. This is just an extra bit that has that advantage. So,
okay, so we can add that in for polling updates, I guess.
Okay, I'll stick it in D10, and then maybe we can have a chat about that.
Yeah.
Sounds good. We've got all the gubbins already. I mean, it's a very easy thing to spec because it's already something that happens in other places. So
Yeah, it is sort of consistent with the general approach taken elsewhere in OpenActive as a whole.
yeah, that's right. That is right. I think probably the reason this wasn't done like this before was based on trying to make it as minimal as possible. But obviously that doesn't really, doesn't work. We want to build something that's robust and scalable as well. So rather than just trying to make it as simple as possible.
I feel like the people we need to ask about this is the brokers. That's the, those are the people who will feel the pain of that.
Of what, not having a feed?
Well, of having a feed, of looking for updates there rather than, it'd be easier to write polling of a customer endpoint than feed parsing.
Well, I suppose if this feed only literally has customer IDs in it, then that might be fine.
Yeah, I guess it depends how often you're polling as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Okay.
Okay. Something for further discussion. Yeah. And yeah, certainly, yeah, obviously good for Gladstone internal discussion. And then, yeah, I guess it does add some complexity to the brokers. So we want to talk to brokers about how feasible it is. I don't suspect it's horrible. Okay, so adding or extending entitlements on customer accounts. This just follows through as an appendix to the previous section. I don't think I had anything to add there. I wonder whether does this cover all the possible error cases that we should be specifying, the 409 conflict. Is that the only reason it might fail? That there's an
Are there more errors specified at the bottom?
Okay, sorry, yeah, here we go.
So that might just be that text is not, needs to be updated.
So this one's a curious one. That doesn't seem like a conflict. That seems like a validation.
Where's that one?
Expiry date must be in the future.
Yes. What was that? What would that be?
Well, we had a similar one, didn't we? In C, we had a similar problem with sort of valid barcode. What did we say that was? Was that just oh, what's that now? Is it? Sorry, I'm singularly failing to find this. So that was just forbidden. Well, that was conflict as well, actually, that we used previously for malformation.
There is another code, isn't there?
There is, yeah. Where's Nathan when we need him? Master the HTTP error code.
Yeah, we got method not allowed, not acceptable. No. Thing is, a lot of the error codes are low level. They're not really designed for REST. So there's only a few that are really like REST relevant.
Yeah.
I don't know actually if there is one. Is there one about
I mean, you could use a generic sort of 400, I suppose.
Yeah, bad request due to invalid syntax. It's not quite invalid syntax though.
Yeah, it's about, yeah.
Could take this as a separate thing to look at maybe.
Yeah, you're right. 400 does seem to assume a sort of lower level.
Yeah.
Looks like a 422. Just Googling Stack Overflow at this point.
Well, yeah, we could maybe comment on it and come back to it.
Okay, let's take that away. Fairly minor point anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Still worth.
We want to get it right, but I don't want to split too many hairs there. Deletions. I guess my only question here was the argument entitlement type. So this is something that's drawn from the SCOS vocabulary of entitlement types. Is that the assumption?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Okay. And that we don't really specify what format that is. And then a 204 is returned empty if it succeeds. And it's idempotent for that reason. Okay, that's seems sensible. So the assumption in a complicated case, so I understand that in Gladstone, there's lots and lots of entitlement types that can be combined, or subscription types, I guess, is the Gladstone internal vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
But for purposes of open data publishing, that gets rationalized into a smaller number of entitlement types. But if you've got combinations of subscriptions, that's treated within this specification, not as a combination of individual subscriptions, but it gets kind of defined as a single type.
That's right. And then the booking system does the mapping between that one type and whatever internal stuff is needed. Yeah.
Right, but again, how that resolves is going to be publicly agreed within that entitlement type list again. Okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's clear for me. Debbie, do you have any questions there?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, good. And then getting the entitlement list.
It's to SCOS endpoint, could be anywhere.
Could be anywhere.
Maybe that's not clear from that though, in fairness.
Yeah, it would. The implication from context, I would have thought this would be something you were getting from the booking system, which I guess it could be, but
yeah.
Okay, and I see you've already added the D10 as discussed with Debbie earlier. Okay, good. Uncharacteristically, I'm going to draw a line there and say we've got 4 minutes on the call. So does anybody have any other business or points they'd like to raise?
Oh, one, actually. This came out of a conversation that Debbie and I were part of a couple of days ago. Well, no, it was yesterday, actually. Goodness. This was about the age of a child that can make a booking, and so just really that is there's a minimum age card issue. So it would be good to, I mean, we've only got a little bit of time now, but it might be good to put that on the agenda for next time, maybe. So if we can talk about that, because the implication there is that we need a way of specifying whether, well, two things it seems like. What's the minimum age of the person that can make the booking without providing a kind of full contact, basically if you register, there's a minimum age that you can just book without any other details associated, which might be 16 or something, so you just are one person. And then there's an emergency contact which is required for a certain level of age. And then there's a certain level of age where you just need to be have an adult account. And those ages change depending on the operator. So for example, it might be that under 8, you just need to have an adult account and use some other mechanism to make the booking. You can't yourself make a booking if you're under 8 years old. But if you're between 8 and 16, it might be that providing a emergency contact might be sufficient. So then you can crack on, make a booking yourself as long as you provided that detail. But the conversation we had was that depending on the agreement between the broker and the operator, it might be that those ages are different.
Right. Okay, so the requirement is to support that kind of banding. So it's not a requirements conversation at this point. It's purely how that gets communicated.
I think so, although thinking about it, yeah, the way that we were talking about, well, the way I was envisioning it anyway, was that there'd just be a standard age. The broker, the seller, the booking system, so everyone active, for example, just says this is our cutoff, 8 and 16 are the two numbers, and then everyone knows that. And so there probably is a need to present that data, but I wonder if it should be a should requirement, in that it's possible that can be ignored with specific agreement between the broker and the booking system. For example, with the MCR case, it sounded like there might be a chance that there's something that happens, for the MCR that might not happen for others because of particular arrangements. So it might not affect other data users. So, but that's the high level of it. So it sounds like, mostly it would be probably good to touch on it in the requirements. But mostly it's a technical thing. I guess if we had the tech bit scoped out first, that would probably be helpful, so we can present back something here and just check with everybody that it makes sense. Because we did talk about this on the call on the 24th, which I think was a requirements call originally.
Yeah. Okay, I will add that to the agenda for next week's call. Debbie, any questions from you?
No, just on that one, I think, again, and I might be wrong just because this is the way my brain's thinking, but I'd associate those rules around to each place that Nick was talking about. So for this place, the minimum age for a dependency account to be, or the maximum age that a dependency account doesn't need to be created, is X. The maximum age for emergency contact details not being collected is Y. Anything above that, there's no additional requirements. But I think I've got to get my head around things like, so emergency contact details are stored as user fields in MRM, for example. Each operator like ourselves might have a different configuration from a Gladstone perspective for those bits of data. So Gladstone need to have a way of telling whoever it is that's creating those member records where that needs to go, I think, unless it's all done in the bit of work that MediaBlaze is doing. I don't know, but
it might be a configuration. It might be another one of those things in the XML file. At the moment, this emergency contact details are just name and number. But are we saying it could be that it's different in different places from that?
Well, it'll be stored in a different field,
yes,
for different customers for Gladstone.
Yes, I see. So it might be that there's a little bit of XML configuration that's needed on the whatever bit of gubbins these people build, the contractor people build, that just says for this customer, that's where this information goes. So it's kind of behind the scenes.
Okay, that looks. Oh, sorry, Debbie.
I was just going to say, it's piecing it all together for me. I just struggle with I need to see it, visualize it, see where it's going to go, and go, right, okay, I understand the logic behind that bit of information there.
Yeah, I think rationale is always the sort of OpenActive problem, that I think, yeah, the the whats are clear and the whys are sometimes lacking. So yeah, it can be hard to piece together indeed. Okay, well, dependent accounts and how we deal with them, I guess that's going to be at least part of next week's agenda. So yeah, we can add those concerns in. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. See you next week.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah.